we have an unidentified flying object.
Okay, I worked in the U.S. space program for 36 years. I was a contractor employee, first working for McDonnell Douglas and then ending up working for Boeing after McDonnell Douglas was purchased by Boeing. I started at the end of the Mercury program and then worked the whole Gemini program. And during Gemini, I was responsible for the design of the equipment for the life support system. And so I had a distinct interest in keeping astronauts alive and having successful equipment. During the program, when we were flying the Gemini spacecraft, my interest in UFOs became very real. It became real because, first of all, Gemini 2, which was unmanned, it was rumored and talked about among our researchers that 2 UFOs had followed Gemini 2. And then Gemini 2 was, of course, recovered later. And I didn't think too much about that except, yeah, that's kind of funny. Very interesting stuff. And then when Gemini 4 flew, and its 4-day mission, 66 orbits, with James McDivitt and Ed White, about halfway through the mission, McDivitt said he has something up here with him.
Astronaut Gordon Cooper is an American hero with a log of over 222 hours of manned spaceflight. He had a long and illustrious career of service to his country. With over 11,000 hours of flight, he was a fighter pilot, U-2 test pilot in the Air Force, and is one of the first men to ever fly in space. He orbited the Earth 22 times in Phase 7, the last of the Mercury missions, on May 15th and 16th of 1963. On August 21st of 1965, he orbited the Earth again on Gemini 5 and remained a backup for Apollo 10.
Well, I've had some occasions to know some of the people who were involved in Roswell at one stage or the other. I think there's been an awful lot of untruth put out on Roswell and an awful lot of conjecture. I think there have been some truth in it. I think definitely there was something other than a weather balloon there. Very likely. I'd like to think they reversed engineered it and did something with it, you know, did some benefit with it, which would be the logical thing to do, but I have no way of knowing whether they did or not.
Within hours of the crash at Roswell, U.S. General Nathan Twining designated the visitors as enemy aliens. It appears from his book that Colonel Corso agreed with that assessment, and that it has remained as official U.S. policy ever since. At that time, however, it was an enemy, quote unquote, about which the U.S. could do nothing, because the visitors were so technologically superior. That led to the recommendation that the discovery be treated with the utmost secrecy, to the point that the crash at Roswell didn't happen and that UFOs don't exist. The rationale was that the ordinary public couldn't cope with the news and might easily panic.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Colonel Corso makes it clear that the Reagan administration's Strategic Defense Initiative, appropriately dubbed Star Wars, was primarily designed for use against the alien intruders. His contemporary successor, the anti-missile missile defense system, is also being designed with that as one of its principal objectives. It is true that a case can be made for attempting to provide a shield against the Russians and Chinese, although everyone knows that the Russians are not going to embark on a policy which would result in their total destruction. is equally true that they, too, are aware of the visitors and know that the perceived threat from the visitors has been a major consideration in the planning of the anti-missile system.
And the incident in question, at least from my perspective, almost ignited a nuclear war. And that was 5 unidentified objects were picked up on radar coming in over the Pacific Northwest, Northern California, Southern Washington, Oregon area. As these objects approached the coast, Strategic Air Command went on a alert. We were in a defense condition, or what is referred to as a DEFCON, Defense Condition 3, which means that the nuclear forces were ready, but they weren't on a ready stated alert. We elevated that to Defense Condition 4. Defense Condition 5 is launch. When we went on our alert, the Russians were also monitoring our nuclear armed forces as we were theirs, and so they knew that our bombers had gone to fail-safe. They knew that the launch codes had been given. They also knew that the hatches on the ICBM missiles had been removed and that we were getting ready to do a launch. I know that Nixon, President Richard Milhouse Nixon, picked up the phone and called the Kremlin. The White House notified the Kremlin that these objects were not, and I repeat, not a preemptive launch by us, that they too, the Russians, had been tracking these objects as they came in over the Bering Sea.
I addressed the question to Dick Cheney because I say the most important question to put to any high-ranking official is not what you think about UFOs or have you seen one. The most important question is, have you ever been briefed on the subject? Did someone walk in your office and tell you what's going on? Because if someone walks into the president's office or some high-ranking official and briefs him on the subject of UFOs, it is for real. It's not imaginary, as the government has been saying for 60 years. So I asked Mr. Cheney, this is 3 months after he became the vice president, I asked him on the air, and this is still on Diane Ream's archives, Mr. Cheney, in all your jobs in government, have you ever been briefed on the subject of UFOs? And if so, when was it and what were you told? And Mr. Cheney said, if I had been briefed on that subject, it probably would have been classified and I wouldn't be talking about it.
January 22nd, 1997, I noticed 3 amber orbs now at a distance far west on the horizon. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, even though they're in a line formation, they were amber, they were in a formation, they were hovering for minutes. And as I'm pointing like this, they reappear in the same spot. And I thought, I have to get a picture of this. And I ran upstairs, I grabbed my 35mm, get out onto the balcony. As I'm ready to shoot the 3 bottom orbs, suddenly 6 amber orbs in a row, totally equidistant from each other, massive span across, pop up.
On March 13, 1997, over 10,000 Arizona residents witnessed the single most spectacular UFO sighting in the 20th century. Headlines surged the nation, and Arizona residents demanded answers from military and state officials.